Hi, folks. I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast. Ken Calvert alongside my good friend, Father Joe Grimaldi. I'd like to ask, everything well? Everything good?
Everything is just perfect.
Well, I know you're busier than heck.
But that's life.
It never ends, does it?
It doesn't.
And we did a podcast. I recommend that people go back and listen to it. Does a Catholic priest ever retire? The answer is simply this. We could do the podcast in 1 minute today. No. I mean, you're probably busier than ever.
In many ways, yes. It's a different kind of busy. I don't have to worry about administrative reporting and things of this sort.
Yeah.
But it's busy in the actual day-to-day work.
It's a good thing to be a popular priest. But it certainly keeps you busy, though, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
Yeah. A lot of people want you for various baptisms, weddings, funerals.
But it's always nice to be needed.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, it's when they stop calling that you got to worry.
That's right.
It's always good to be recognized.
Then you have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, oh, my God, what's going on?
Yeah. I found this the other day. I was just looking online with the as we've been discussing a couple of times on the podcast, the elephant in the room, the scandal in the church, where is the good news? So I was just thinking, let's reset, all right? And I went back and I found a really interesting piece. Pope Francis said there's no point in people going to church if they do not follow the teachings of the Bible in their daily lives. The head of the Catholic Church took a stand against what he termed Christian parrots, people who talk a lot about their religion but don't do good deeds. Given the hurricane, Florence, what's going on, the Atlantic coastline there, people always find a reason to pitch in at that point. That should just be part of our DNA as Catholics.
Yes, it should be. I mean, it's a daily living. I think what's beautiful about Pope Francis is, and no one is perfect. I know that he has some criticism here and there. But by the same token, you look at Francis and he really appreciates the importance of the human person. And if we do appreciate the human person, we realize that it's our obligation to help others when they're in need and to reach out to others when they're in need. So it's one thing to attend the liturgies faithfully and to go to the church on a regular basis and to say all of your daily prayers, and those things are important, but by the same token, faith without action is very empty. And I think this is one of the things that all of us have to remind ourselves on a regular basis. For example, you have an old grandmother who's in a nursing home and lonely as can be. A simple phone call would really brighten up her day, thinking, wow. Now, we may not think that phone call is all that important because we live in a busy schedule and that type of thing, but by the same token, to the person that is alone and in a nursing home, a phone call means the world to her or to him. And I think this is a simple thing. Doesn't require a lot of work. It doesn't require a lot of money. It's a matter of just making a phone call. Reaching out to those people that are hurting, particularly, as you mentioned, right now the East Coast is hurting quite a bit. Because of the hurricanes. Florence has devastated certain areas. And what is it that we can do? I think one of the things we can do is investigate what is the best way that we can help. Now, if it's a matter of sending money, you want to make sure that you send it through organizations that will really help people rather than help their administrative costs. And I think this is a mistake that all of us fall into on occasion, where we don't do the proper investigation, because there are organizations where most of the money goes into the help of the others, and others where in the organization most of the money goes to the administrators. Well, that's a waste of time and a waste of money. So I think it's important that we do that, do our homework first before we send the money. If it's sending goods, food in whatever way we can do. I think the closer you live to the people that are hurting, the easier it is to deal with food and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think for those who are a distance away from those people, money might be the best way to do it. But again, making sure that it's the proper organizations that are able to help those people truly help them.
And individual churches, the parishes, they naturally, that's just natural for that parish to say, what we're going to do this weekend, bring a can or a couple of cans, bring diapers, bring something to Mass. We'll have a tractor trailer out in the parking lot, people alongside. And you end up having a heck of a good time doing that.
Very much so. Yeah, it's
loading the truck with Father Grimaldi.
But I think the thing too
or do you
is
drive the truck? Never mind. I'm sorry.
Could
I
be.
digress.
But interacting with the friends and so on and so forth when you're doing that kind of work is always uplifting. Of course, in that kind of a situation, it's better that you live close to the people that are in need. What many of the churches do instead, if they're not that close to where the devastation is occurring, they would probably take up an extra collection on a particular Sunday and send it down to, and then very often, depending on the seriousness of the devastation, very often the diocese will mandate that all the churches take up a collection for that particular need. So the church is trying to do the best it can with what it has.
But at the same time, that gets back to the reflection of Pope Francis about the fact that don't be a parrot and just go to church on Sunday and tell people chest thumping, I'm a Catholic, I go every Sunday, I say my prayers. No, you've got to go outside the ropes and do much more. You have to live it like you said. I really like the fact that what you just said about picking up the phone, calling a family member, calling a grandparent, like you said, or just a good friend who, I'm going to do that when we get done. I have a friend right now who's about to have triple bypass on Friday. Mm-hmm. You've gone through this. I've gone through this. He's waiting for Friday. He's sitting there waiting. The friend that called me said, do him a favor. Pick up the phone. Just call him because he's bored. And I'm going to do that when we get done with the podcast today. It's very simple, like you said, but boy, it means the world to somebody that, like, hey, you know who checked in today? Father Joe. Ken Calvert checked in today. Yeah, made my day, you know?
Well, I just want to say, too, that, the way Francis worded it can be worded in a different way as well, I think, where you might say, I really love the human person. I really love those people who are hurting, and they're in my thoughts. Well, if the love stays in the heart and doesn't go into action, you say, what good is that? Really, whatever love you have has to become a verb. It has to become something that you do to carry out that love that you have. So I think this is what this is all about. I think this is what Pope Francis is trying to tell us, that, yes, it's important that you go through your liturgy. It's important that you attend Mass and do all of the rituals and things of this sort. But if you don't practice, if you don't put that faith into action, you are certainly losing out.
And what I'm trying to say is the fact that we shouldn't have to wait for an event, a hurricane or any other event, locally, nationally, or internationally. This should be something that's basically, it should be part of the Catholic fabric.
Correct. Or any Christian for that. I believe in the human person.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah. I'd go a step further and say all people. Because the human person is the human person, and that's what we want to love and respect one another, because we are human persons.
And, the interesting part, and I'll finish the quote, he said, if I say I'm a Catholic and go to Mass, but then I don't speak with my parents, we have an issue. Help out my grandparents or the poor. Go to see those who are sick. This doesn't prove my faith. There's no point.
So often I find people have been silent with each other for years, and they don't remember what caused that argument that they think they have that's building up this hatred for the other person, and therefore that's why they don't want to speak to that other person. Just recently I was talking with someone who does not speak to a brother and a sister that she has, and hasn't for 2 years. So it goes on and on and on. And then when you try to say, well, what do you think? Well, it had something to do with the way she answered me or the way he answered me when I asked a question. Well, I think, yes, we might be hurt for the moment, but that's not the end of the world. I think we have to be able to forgive. We have to be able to carry on, realizing that that is another person, a human person. Not only that, someone who is my flesh and blood. We are related.
And instead of putting it in air quotes, that's just the, air quotes again, Christian way. There are so many people, though, that are really committed to they do too much. I mean, you often hear that expression, stop it, you're doing too much. I don't believe you can do too much when it comes to helping people out.
I would have to agree with you for most of what you just said, but there comes a time when the mother of a family neglects her first duties to reach out and join 1,000 organizations so that she could be helpful for the community. Well, that's kind of not putting things in their right order, their right place. First and foremost, the mother has an obligation to the family. And if she's neglecting that, there's something wrong. So doing too much, if you want,
can be a little counterproductive.
It's counterproductive
to the family, and
yes,
you know, in going back to what you were saying about the family, you know, then all of a sudden that could create issues in the family.
Definitely. Why isn't she ever around?
That could be the genesis of the reason why they're not talking today.
Yeah.
That's interesting. You got to balance your life in general.
Well, there's a time to do this and a time to do that. And I think you really have to consider helping others. There's no question. But you also have to understand what your position is. And so if you're the father of a family, the mother of a family, you have to first give your attention to them. And then you could reach out to the world. But if you neglect your family, there's something wrong with that.
So, you know, I just came upon something that I said, and I'll throw this out to you. You, as a priest, a Catholic priest, with so much going on right now, how do you balance your life? Because balance, I think, in a life is really important.
One of my favorite words is compartmentalization. I think you have to learn to do that. You have to, for example, I mean, coming from a very tragic situation, which people are trying to heal right after the death of their son, spending 2 hours talking about the preparation for the liturgy itself, but also using those 2 hours as a means of healing. The mere fact that you have to think about the opening hymn, what reading are we going to use? These things have a way of healing the person as well. And then my life brought me here immediately after that. And then I have to go back to do marriage preparation because there's a couple that's getting married in the near future, next month actually. And so we're doing the preparation for that marriage. So then you have your regular duties, which these are regular, but they're not always so regular. You have your Mass in the morning, and then you have some other meeting in the evening, and you have to balance all of that stuff in the best way you can. So you learn to shed a tear, but give a smile. You have to do all of those things. And, and again, you have to use your common sense. When you're dealing with a family that's hurting because of a death in the family, yes, you want to empathize with them, but by the same token, you also want to be able to lift them from their grief to a certain degree so that they could find the proper consolation. And so that's what your job is. Then as you turn around and you go into a marriage situation where things are joyful and hopeful, everything is wonderful. What are we going to do for this? So you do have to compartmentalize so much of your life.
They're asking you to orchestrate highs and lows each and every day, if you understand what I just said.
I do.
And I was just going to say as well, there has to be everybody. There's not a person on the planet that does it professionally won't say there has to be some me quality time.
You bet your life.
Or else you won't survive.
You'll wither away. You'll become useful to no one.
You're right.
I think if you want to be useful to some, you have to use common sense. And so it's unfortunate that very often once you get involved, it's very difficult to say no to people, and you could really hurt yourself in the end, psychologically, physically, in all of these different ways.
Health, my friend. You know, that's called stress, and stress is not a good thing. I can't think of a more stressful job right now than to be a Catholic priest.
Well, that's because of the added difficulties that the whole church is experiencing.
Obviously.
And when you have the crisis, of course, that affects individuals as well. Not only the people in the pews, it affects the priest, it affects everybody who's involved.
You know what? I got to tell everybody listening right now. I don't know, you probably, when you listen, have a ton of questions. You would have said, I would have inserted this right here. You can do that via the email. We would love to just be able to do this, with each and every one of you every day. But we do our best to summarize. At the end of the day, it means more to be a Catholic right now than ever before. And at the same time,
that rare virtue of common sense.
It's just a great, great opportunity for me to sit down and talk with you, and for you to share your wisdom, your personality, and your emotions about what's going on right now, 2018, in the Catholic Church.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I appreciate that.
I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe Podcast. I'm Ken Calvert.
God bless you, Ken.
Thank you.
See you soon. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe Podcast.
If you'd like, you can email us. It's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. That's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook. Simply search Father Joe Grimaldi. And thanks for listening, everyone.